Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is a Leatherleaf Mahonia. This is Leatherleaf Mahonia, a slow-growing evergreen shrub with beautiful, lustrous, dark green leaves. Leatherleaf Mahonia can reach 8 feet in height and probably 5 to 6 feet in width over time. Very easy to keep this plant in the 4-foot range, 4x4, with only maybe an every other year pruning. It's not the fastest growing thing in the world. Leatherleaf Mahonia is best in zone 7 to 9. This plant could probably be tried on a shady foundation in zone 6B. On a foundation here in zone 7, I rarely ever see it damaged in any way, so I don't think you'd have much of a problem with that. It would not like to be out in open space. Probably doesn't even like to be out in open space in like zone 7A. So in zones, let's say 6B and 7A, let's put it on the foundation, on the shady side of your foundation. And in 7B, 8, and 9, no problem to put this out in more open space. Leatherleaf Mahonia is slow growing, probably only adding 4 to maybe 8 inches of growth in the ground each year. Leatherleaf Mahonia are shade-loving evergreen shrubs and would prefer to be in less than a half a day's sun. If you put this plant in full sun or put it out in open space where the winter winds can hit it, it will get burned in both scenarios. So this plant needs to be someplace where it's protected from the winter wind and also doesn't get a lot of the midday sun. Leatherleaf Mahonia is a great plant in a woodland garden. This plant would go in the back of other items that you're using in your woodland garden and has this beautiful evergreen green foliage on it. It doesn't really, it's just kind of the backdrop to everything else until in the wintertime when it flowers, and then it'll be quite showy, maybe while your other woodland perennials are dormant. This would make a great choice for that. Would also work on a foundation on your shadier side of your foundation, and you can keep this, in the 4-foot range pretty easily. There aren't a lot of winter flowering evergreen shrubs. Camellias and Daphne fall into that category, and also Mahonia. Mahonia gets beautiful clusters of yellow flowers in mid to late winter, which then become beautiful purple-blue berries in the summertime. In terms of planting your Leatherleaf Mahonia, we definitely have to be concerned that these drain well. It's not a plant that's going to like to have wet feet in between rains, so we'll want to practice elevating these and also mixing in amendments if you have heavy clay soil. So I would dig this to the depth of this root ball, dig your hole that deep, and then slightly wider than that, maybe 1.5 times the width of the root ball, or maybe 2 times the width of the root ball. And then whatever soil comes out of the hole, if it's a heavy clay, I would mix in some pine bark soil conditioner. It's what we're growing these in. It's just an aged pine bark that you can get at most garden centers. If it's a sandier soil, you can use some compost or some peat moss, just a little bit of that, just to hold a little bit of water in place. But a sandy loam soil is probably the best place to put this plant anyway. We've got our hole dug to the depth, and whatever came out of that hole, we're going to amend it with the pine bark or the peat moss or the compost, whatever, based on whatever type of soil you have. We're going to put some of that mix back in the bottom of the hole, maybe 2 inches. And so that when we pull this out of the container and set it into the ground, it's actually going to be elevated a little bit above the existing grade, soil grade. Take the rest of our soil mix, pull it up to the edge of it, tamp it down, water it in well, and then lightly mulch this plant. You definitely don't want to bury the base of this plant in mulch. Anything that's not buried when you get it, don't bury it when you plant it. Don't put soil up the base of it. Don't put mulch up the base of it. And you can mulch heavier out around it, but as you get closer and closer to the trunk of this plant, just have your mulch fade away, and that'll be ideal. Typically, Mahonia is not a very aggressive plant rooting in a container, so I think when you pull it out, it will be unlikely that the roots will be really, really matted together, but they will be circling some, so I would pull at them a little bit to get them to grow outward rather than continue to wrap around one another. Leatherleaf Mahonia is extremely drought tolerant once it's established. I think if you planted this on a foundation, you'd almost never need to rewater it after the first 6 months or so. If it's planted in a woodland garden though, trees are very good at stealing water from everything around them. Shrubs, your perennials, your annuals, everything. So I think that the best thing to do with these is, if I was planting several of these as a backdrop in a woodland space, I'd probably run a drip hose at the same time after I planted them and before I mulched them, so that I could hook it up later and water these a couple times, maybe 2-3 times every summer, just drown the space around them and assume that the trees are stealing water from them. If you let it get too dry, this is not a good plant to let you know that it's dry. It's just going to start dropping interior leaves, and by then it's going to take a while for it to recover. So this is a plant, like I say, it's extremely drought tolerant, but where we tend to place this plant, we can kind of put it in jeopardy of being too dry during the summer. So just keep an eye on it. Leatherleaf Mahonia can be fertilized after the coldest temperatures in the winter, sometime around March, with a slow release fertilizer. I would get a slow release fertilizer for acid loving plants, like an azalea, camellia, rhododendron fertilizer, or holly tone would be a good organic option. And those would work great on these, and those will last 3 or 4 months. And by the time they run out, it's needing to kind of stop growing anyway, because it's transitioning toward cooler weather. Leatherleaf Mahonia rarely ever need to be pruned. This is, like I said, this is not a very fast growing plant, so you're really maybe once every other year going to need to take this thing down a little bit, and that will also increase some branching down at the base of it and keep it fuller. These do have spikes on the leaves. It's never really bothered me. You can actually come in here. It grows almost bamboo-like in layers, so it's very, very easy just to come and cut one of those layers out. I can take 4 inches of growth out of this plant with one single cut and then dispose of it without getting yourself cut up. Leatherleaf Mahonia is not really susceptible to many insect or disease problems. We'll get some foliar spotting on these leaves, especially in the nursery where we're irrigating over the top and the leaves are staying wet for prolonged periods of time. This one right here has a lot of spotting on it. And this is the end of the summer, so all of these leaves have had water on them nearly constantly all summer. So it's about as bad as it gets, is what I'm looking at on here right now. So I'm not really worried about that. The one main concern I would have is if you plant this plant in an area that doesn't drain well and it ends up with wet feet, you'll almost certainly end up with root rot problems. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the low maintenance, shade loving Leatherleaf Mahonia. Thank you for watching, and if this video was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also, comment below with any questions you might have about other shade-loving evergreens. Thank you.